Click on the cover of the Whale Watch Journal to open it and begin reading. Chapter 1. Family Matters. Several years had passed since Willy had been freed from his sea aquarium prison by a boy named Jesse. After many years in captivity, Willy had finally rejoined his family, J-Pod. Willy's mother, Catspaw, kept close watch over him as he played with his younger brother and sister, Little Spot and Luna. The only reminder of his former life was the bent dorsal fin that cut through the cool water above him. Randolph, Willy's former caretaker at the aquarium, had tracked J-Pod all the way up the coast. Standing at the helm of his boat, the Natselane, he listened intently as orca chatter sounded through a loudspeaker. Down below, Nadine, Randolph's orca spotter, adjusted knobs on the recording equipment used to track the orcas.
What's up, Uncle Randolph? What is it?
Willy.
Randolph smiled. Willy had made it home. During the past few years, Jesse had often wondered about his friend Willy. He hoped that Willy had joined his family back in the ocean where he belonged. For his part, Jesse had finally begun to accept Glenn and Annie Greenwood as his adopted family. But even their closeness wouldn't make the pain go away when he learned of his mother's death. Jesse was in shock when he learned that his mother had left behind another son, Jesse's half-brother Elvis, whom he had never known about. Waves of hurt and anger shot through Jesse when he learned that Elvis would be coming to live with the Greenwoods as well. "I don't want a brother," Jesse screamed as he ran out of the house. But it was no use. Elvis was on his way. Chapter 2. Breaking the Ice. Jesse stole glances at his half-brother seated next to him as the car snaked along the coast highway. They had met only the night before, and now he was forced to spend his vacation with the 8-year-old bragging Elvis.
So how did you get the name Elvis, Elvis?
My mom.
Gee, that's funny. That's how I got mine, too.
Whatever. I'm going to be a big movie star, just like my dad.
Yeah, right.
My dad, you know, Al Pacino. My friends, they call me the Godfather.
Give me a break.
Hey, the ocean! My mom loved the ocean. She was born at sea, you know,
Oh, well, that's interesting.
on an aircraft carrier. Now, I'm not supposed to know that, you know. It's classified.
You come with the remote?
Not that I know of.
Jesse had been looking forward to this camping trip for nearly a month, but things had changed. The trip was ruined for sure. It was a beautiful ride over to San Juan Harbor. Jesse and Elvis looked out over the ferry's transom, watching the wake recede behind them. Just then, a black and white whale, an orca, surfaced and began body surfing across the ferry's waves. Elvis was amazed. He'd never seen anything like it. Jesse just smiled, remembering the good old days with Willy. The Greenwoods campsite sat on a hill overlooking the sea. Randolph drove up as they unpacked. He had come to welcome them and to take Jesse whale spotting. As they drove to the dock, Randolph handed Jesse a present, a carved orca pendant from his village. He told Jesse, "My people believe that wearing this around your neck keeps the orca close to your soul." When they arrived at the Natsalane, Jesse hadn't expected to see anyone else, let alone a pretty girl his own age. Jesse couldn't help but stare as Nadine moved skillfully around the deck preparing for the trip. Randolph cast a protective glance at his goddaughter Nadine, then back at the ogling Jesse.
Here. Keep a lookout.
Oh,
Give me a break, Jesse. She's my goddaughter.
so what are you saying?
I'm saying she's like a daughter to me. I look out for her.
Okay.
Nadine! Come on up here.
What'd you need, Randolph?
Nadine, Jesse. Jesse, Nadine.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nadine, take over here. Jesse, come with me. I want you to listen to something.
I gotta get by.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Randolph tried to ignore Jesse's curiosity as they went below. Randolph played Jesse the recording of J-Pod he had made earlier. Jesse's eyes lit up. He immediately recognized the familiar voice. "That's Willy!" he cried. Back on deck, Jesse and Nadine scanned the water for any signs of J-Pod. "There!" Randolph shouted, pointing to water spouts and dorsals 100 yards away.
That's Catspaw! Willie's mother!
His mom. Found her.
Over there, they're spy hopping!
Randolph! That one's got a white patch on his dorsal.
Her dorsal.
Her dorsal?
That's Luna, Willie's sister. The calf beside her is Little Spot, Willie's brother.
Yeah, I see her. That's Willy! That's Willy!
I know.
Willy! Oh, he looks great. Willy!
It was J-Pod, Willy's family. Chapter 3, Meeting Willy. Jesse arrived back in camp like a kid just back from a candy store. "Glenn," he called, "I saw Willy. It was from 1,000,000 miles away, and just for a second, but it was so cool." Glenn smiled. He knew how much Willy had meant to him. "Do you think he misses me?" Jesse asked quietly. "I'm sure he does, Jess," Glenn replied. When it was time for bed, Jesse couldn't believe he had to share his tent with Elvis. Elvis had done nothing to help set up camp, and now he was complaining. "I got a bad back bungee jumping," Elvis said. "I can't sleep on the ground." Jesse was tired of Elvis already. "I'll tell you what," Jesse replied. "You just stay on your side of the tent, and I'll stay on mine." Later that night, Jesse stormed out of the tent and down to the dock. Elvis was getting on his nerves, and he needed some time alone. Jesse's harmonica playing echoed across the calm waters when, by accident, Jesse dropped the harmonica into the dark water. Jesse peered over the edge of the dock when suddenly Willy burst out of the water right in front of him.
Great. Just great! Guess you've been eating pretty well, huh? Oh, wow. Thanks, boy. You found it. Thanks. I missed you so much.
Not far away, the Liberian oil tanker Dakar churned its way up the dark coastline. Captain Nilsson was worried. They had lost time in some bad weather, and more was on the way. He knew that his job, as well as his crew's jobs, would be history if this shipment was late.
What is it, sir?
We lost time up north. We're late.
So?
Oh, I am captain of the ship, Kelly.
Yes, sir. I mean, no, sir.
I'm captain of the ship, Kelly, because my ships always run on time. Pembroke Oil doesn't look kindly upon late deliveries.
Yes, sir.
Dakar, this is Seattle traffic. We have a report of heavy winds and reduced visibility at Smith Island.
Reduce speed to 12 knots.
Reducing speed to 12 knots.
Maintain 15 knots.
But, sir, without a tug escort in these waters,
Kelly!
regulations...
Resuming speed to 15 knots.
Ignoring the Coast Guard's warnings, Captain Nilsson ordered the Dakar's speed increased to 15 knots. Jesse rose with the sun the next morning. Meeting Willy the night before had put him in a great mood. He was anxious to head out with Randolph and Nadine to search for J-Pod, even if it meant taking Elvis with him. Elvis had to run to keep up with Jesse. "Hurry up!" Jesse called back to him, annoyed. "Slow down!" Elvis cried, but it was no use. Chapter 4. Willy Plays Matchmaker. When Jesse and Elvis arrived at the Natsilani, there was bad news. "Engine trouble," Randolph informed them. "It's gonna be a few hours." Jesse frowned, disappointed. Just then Nadine appeared, bag in hand, and brushed by Jesse on her way up the dock. With a mischievous grin on his face, Jesse sent Elvis back to camp and set out after Nadine. Jesse followed Nadine to a quiet, secluded cove and hid behind a rock to spy on her. He didn't notice that Elvis had followed him and was spying on both him and Nadine. Just then there was a sound in the water. Jesse looked just in time to see Willy's familiar bent dorsal fin submerge. In his excitement, Jesse slipped and fell into the water, exposing his hiding place to Nadine. "Do you always follow people?" Nadine asked, annoyed. "Not really," Jesse replied sheepishly. Nadine helped him out of the water. "What is this place?" he asked. "Rubbing Rocks Beach," she replied. "The orcas come here to rub themselves on the smooth rocks on the bottom of the cove." From afar, Elvis watched in disbelief. Jesse was consorting with the enemy, a girl. "Look!" Jesse cried, pointing to an orca that had surfaced close to shore. "Watch this," he said to Nadine. Jesse pulled out his harmonica and began to play. To Nadine's amazement, Willy surfaced right in front of them. Both Nadine and Willy were nervous as Jesse introduced them. Before long, Jesse and Willy were in the water together, just like old times.
He's showing off again.
What's he doing?
Showing off.
Hey. Whoa!
Willy, what's your problem? Yeah, great friends. Gotta get it. Come on in, the water's great.
Jesse, get a grip. This is a killer whale.
Oh, come on, he's my friend. Whoa, whoa, whoa!
Jesse!
Yeah, great. Way to go, boy.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Nadine was definitely impressed. Later that afternoon, back at the campsite, Jesse and Nadine scanned the seas for signs of J-Pod. As they watched, the Dakar appeared and cut across the horizon, marring the otherwise beautiful scene. "I hate oil tankers," Nadine said. "They come through here like it's their own private highway." They watched in silence as the tanker left a roiling wake in its path. Chapter 5. Disaster at Sea. Nadine and Jesse were waiting for Willy, Little Spot, and Luna when they arrived at Rubbing Rocks Beach early the next morning. Wearing dive masks and flippers, Nadine and Jesse took to the water. Soon the orcas headed back out to sea, leaving Nadine and Jesse alone on the beach, hand in hand. The sun felt warm on their skin as they shared their first nervous kiss. That evening, Jesse and Elvis lay awake, staring at the ceiling of their tent. Jesse needed to ask Elvis about their mother, but he wasn't sure how to begin.
Elvis. Elvis, wake up.
What?
I have to ask you something.
Okay.
Did Mom ever talk about before you were born, when she lived out here?
No.
Did she ever talk about my dad?
No.
Did she ever talk about me?
No.
Oh.
She had problems.
Like what?
She lied a lot. Said she loved me. Said she would never leave.
Jesse was starting to realize that while he and Elvis didn't have much in common, they did share one very important bond: their mother. Late that night, dark clouds shrouded the coastline as the Dakar began its dash past Lawson Reef, the most dangerous part of its journey north. Suddenly, there was an explosion on board. "What's the problem down there, engine room?" Captain Nilsson shouted into the intercom. The engines were dead.
We're on the wrong side of the buoy. Hot starboard!
Not responding!
Hot starboard!
I can't bring it around. 4 fathoms. 2 fathoms. We've run aground. We gotta shut it down.
The captain's mayday call came too late. The rocks had done their damage. Before running aground, the Dakar's deep hull separated Willy, Luna, and Little Spot from their mother Catspaw. Crude oil, thick and black, oozed out of the ruptured tanker and was closing in on them quickly. Hearing her mother's cry, Luna panicked and blindly swam forward, straight into the looming oil. At first, Jesse didn't know what had awakened him. He sat up alert, waiting for whatever it was to happen again. Then he heard it, a whale call echoing through the trees. Quietly, he made his way down to the water, with Elvis following close behind as usual. "Look, Elvis, it's Luna. She's beached." There, in 2 feet of water, Luna lay gasping, covered with oil. "Go get help, Elvis," Jesse cried. "Tell Annie and Glenn to call Randolph. Go!" Glenn and Annie had a hard time believing Elvis's tall-sounding tale about a grounded oil tanker and a beached whale. "Why should I believe you?" Glenn asked, annoyed. Just then, Luna's plaintive wail filled the air. "I'll call Randolph," Glenn said, regarding Elvis with a bit more respect. Chapter 6. The Trouble with Willy. Things began to happen very quickly. Randolph arrived and gave Luna a quick examination. Next, they had to get her back into the water.
Easy, girl, easy.
Oil's all over.
Easy, girl, steady now.
Here you go, Randolph. It's okay.
Let me get this.
It's okay.
I'm afraid the oil's gotten into her lungs.
Okay.
Run this down to the lab. Tell them it's for me, and it's an emergency.
Okay, let's go. Easy now. Easy. Easy. Yeah, whatever you can. On 3, guys, okay? 1, 2, 3. Push!
Come on, Luna!
Easy, girl, easy. Okay, again, on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Come on!
Push!
Push!
Go! Go, girl! Go,
Hey,
girl!
guys!
There she goes. She's going. Go, girl. Go. Go, girl.
She needs help, Randolph.
Once done, Willy immediately began circling Luna protectively. Television and newspaper reporters gathered at the beach. Dr. Kate Haley, the top whale veterinarian in the area, was called in to nurse Luna back to health. Meanwhile, the Benbrook Oil Company sent John Milner out to the cove where Luna had beached. Because the Dakar was Benbrook's vessel, it was Milner's job to oversee the emergency cleanup and to offer his company's assistance in helping to save the orcas. On the way to the cove, he watched news reports in the back of the company van. "What a nightmare," he groaned. Milner arrived just as Dr. Haley was attempting to give Luna an injection. "Willy doesn't like doctors, Randolph," Jesse said, shaking his head. "I don't know how she's going to get near Luna with that needle." Dr. Haley's assistant tried to maneuver their small boat near Luna, but Willy would not allow it.
They seem to be protecting him. It's not like him. Stop.
Whatever trust Willy had left for humans was fast running out. Milner, Dr. Haley, and Randolph gathered to discuss the situation. "I just want to save these whales, Dr. Haley," Milner said. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Haley didn't appreciate his condescending tone. "You can't just buy a killer whale's trust, Mr. Milner," she countered. Randolph eyed Milner with mistrust. "If you mean what you say, Mr. Milner," Randolph said, "I may be able to help you." Randolph and Dr. Haley took Milner to meet Jesse. They knew that if there was anyone who could gain Willy's trust, it was Jesse. "Willy doesn't trust you," Jesse said, looking at Milner. It was clear that Jesse didn't trust him either. "If I help you, you have to promise that you'll do all you can to get Willy, Little Spot, and Luna back to their mom." Milner agreed and shook on the deal. "It's a deal." Chapter 7. Trust Regained. The effort to save Luna had called on everyone to pitch in and help. Everyone, that is, except for Elvis. Annie found him sitting alone, pretending to read a magazine.
You want to tell me what's bothering you?
Nothing.
You and Jesse seem to be getting along pretty good now.
I hate him.
Now, I know that's not true.
The whole world kisses Jesse's butt. I'm tired of it.
Let me tell you something. This family doesn't play favorites. We don't kiss butts.
I want to help.
Well, the whales need your help. They need everybody to pitch in.
You promise I can help?
I promise.
Well, will you spit shake on it?
Okay. This is very unhygienic.
Annie cheered him up by making a spit shake promise that he would be able to help save the whales too. Together, they headed down to the cove to wish Jesse and Dr. Haley good luck. Jesse's job was to lure Willy to him by playing his harmonica. Once Willy was distracted, Jesse would give the signal to Dr. Haley to approach Luna. They all agreed the first part was the hardest.
That's a boy. Come on, it's me. Jesse, come on. It's okay. Come on. It's okay. Whoa! Whoa, whoa, whoa! Come on, Willy, I want to help. Okay. What's the matter? Come on, Willy. Whoa. Come on, stop.
Oh, God, he's going to eat him, isn't he?
Oh! You're gonna hurt yourself. Please stop. Come on. Come on. It's all right. It's all right.
At first, Willy was stubborn, but Jesse's gift of a fresh salmon placated him long enough for Dr. Haley to do her work. Only time would tell if Luna's condition would improve. Back on shore, Randolph studied the map that tracked the spreading oil spill. "What's the matter?" Jesse asked. "The oil is coming this way fast," Randolph said, pointing to the map. If Luna's health didn't improve quickly, all their efforts would be in vain. The oil would trap Luna, Willy, and Little Spot inside the cove where they would surely die. "They won't leave until Luna is better," Randolph told them. That evening, Nadine and Jesse watched the sun go down over the cove. Nadine couldn't hold back her tears. Her favorite place on earth had been destroyed. The birds, the seals, the fish, everything that made the cove perfect, had been ruined in one day. Jesse wiped a tear from her cheek. He knew she was right, but with luck, they could still save Willy and his family. Jesse returned to camp that night to find Elvis playing with his whale necklace. At first, Jesse was irritated, seeing his gift from Randolph in Elvis's hands.
Who said you could touch that?
President of the United States. He announced it on TV.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, what's it mean?
There was a young Haiti Indian named Nazi Clowney. He lived many years before there were wells. One day, Nazi Clowney got lost and he couldn't find his way home. He carved the first well ever out of a log. Nazi Clowney got on the back of the well. Rode all the way home.
Rode a long way home?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a cool story, Jesse.
Randolph told it to me.
This time, however, Jesse decided not to give Elvis a hard time. He was learning that his little brother, however annoying he may be at times, was actually an okay kid. Chapter 8. Medicine Man. Randolph and Nadine rushed into the camp the next morning with bad news. Luna had beached herself again. Dr. Haley's medicine wasn't working. Randolph sent the others down to help Luna while he took Jesse out to collect plants for an alternative remedy. There are other medicines besides the one Dr. Haley uses, Randolph told Jesse. We must try them all to save Luna. My grandmother taught me how to call on Mother Nature to heal the sick, Randolph said to Jesse. Now I'll teach you. Together they collected the plants they would need to help Luna.
What's that?
It's called spugum. It's very, very strong.
How strong?
Give me your hand.
It's in my mouth. Ugh.
Meanwhile, Annie and Glenn had managed to get Luna back into the water. Suddenly, Annie realized she had broken her promise to Elvis. She hadn't let him help Luna, and now he had disappeared. Annie and Glenn headed back to the campground, only to discover that Elvis and all of his things were gone. They quickly drove to town, hoping that someone had seen him or knew where he was. Meanwhile, Elvis had tried to leave the island, but just missed the last ferry. He was forced to find a place to stay until the next ferry left in the morning. That night, Jesse and Randolph went down to the cove. A full moon illuminated Willy, Little Spot, and Luna as they surfaced silently in front of the humans. Randolph rubbed Luna's tongue with the medicine he had prepared. They would know by morning if she would recover. Not far away, Elvis lay crying in the cockpit of a dry-docked sailboat, wishing he was back with Jesse, Annie, and Glenn. Chapter 9. Elvis to the Rescue. As the sun rose over the water, Dr. Haley and Randolph stood on the dock, smiling. Luna swam strongly around the cove with her two brothers. She was doing much better. Meanwhile, Elvis was having breakfast at the harbor coffee shop before boarding the ferry. Suddenly, a conversation at the next table caught his attention.
I'll have a jelly filled and a coffee.
Coffee.
Yeah, black.
Black coffee.
Coffee, I think?
No, I'm fine. We haven't taken an orca out of the wild in 20 years. Now there's 3 right in my hands. $1 million each for the 2 young ones. $2 million for the older brother. The young males are particularly attractive because of their breeding capabilities. The older brother's already trained. He's a gold mine.
You've got to be very careful.
Don't worry, you're covered. Long-term rehabilitation is what I recommend.
Just so long as it looks like we have the whale's best interest at heart. Do you understand? That's all that matters to me.
Sure, add your 10%. Besides, we do have their best interest at heart. They'll be well cared for, I assure you. In the meantime, they're getting nice and healthy. No reason why people shouldn't pay to see them, right?
It was Milner. He was planning to trap and sell the orcas. Sold! Elvis abandoned his plans to run away and returned to the cove. Workers had already begun sealing off the cove with floating booms that kept the oil from floating in while steel nets kept the whales from getting out. Jesse and Nadine were furious that Dr. Haley had agreed to let Milner remove the orcas from the ocean. Quickly, Elvis told Jesse and Nadine about Milner's scheme. Many people looked on as Jesse, Elvis, and Nadine confronted Milner about his dirty dealings. It was common knowledge that Benbrook was paying to fly the whales to a marine institute for rehabilitation. However, no one knew that Milner planned to sell the orcas to the institute where they would be kept on permanent display. "Get these kids out of here," Milner hissed, turning his back on the crowd. Both Jesse and Willy knew it was time to take matters into their own hands. By then, workmen had succeeded in hoisting Little Spot out of the water. Sensing the danger Little Spot was in, Willy moved instinctively to free his sibling.
Watch that sucker!
The steel nets and booms sealing off the cove were still the biggest obstacles between the orcas and the open sea. But Jesse had a plan. Quickly, Jesse, Nadine, and Elvis hopped into Glenn's powerboat, the Little Dipper. Glenn had only shown Jesse how to drive the boat once. "Are you sure you know how to drive this thing?" Nadine asked, a bit skeptical. "I guess we'll find out, won't we?" Jesse yelled back over the roaring engine. The three of them motored out to the center of the cove to find Willy. Chapter 10. Going Home. Jesse, Nadine, and Elvis could see Luna and Little Spot circling the cove, but Willy was nowhere to be found. Jesse cut the engine. Everyone watched tensely, sensing that the orcas were edgy and unpredictable. Then Jesse called to Willy. It was time to get them back to their ocean home.
Come on, boy, come on. Whoa! Hey, boy. Yeah.
Kid is nuts.
See that boom? We're gonna get you out of here. It's gonna be okay, I promise. Remember the old days? Remember this? Yeah, you remember.
What does that signal mean?
Give him a show, boy. Give him a show. See that boom? You gotta break it.
On Jesse's familiar signal, Willy breached the water and came crashing down on the net. Willy, Luna, and Little Spot quickly escaped through the crushed netting. Jesse, Nadine, and Elvis followed them out of the cove in the Little Dipper. Their work wasn't complete until Willy, Luna, and Little Spot were safely out past the oil spill. Just then, the sound of a terrible explosion aboard the Dakar echoed across the water. Fire began to spread across the floating oil. Willy, Luna, and Little Spot swam strongly through the water toward the open ocean. Suddenly, the world around them was glowing orange and red. Willy nudged Luna and Little Spot deeper, diving beneath the burning oil above. On the surface, the Little Dipper was cut off by the fire. Jesse turned sharply to avoid the flames, straight into a large rock sticking up out of the water. From aboard the Natsilani, Glenn, Annie, and Randolph had seen the Little Dipper disappear behind the flames. Immediately, Randolph radioed a helicopter to rescue Jesse, Nadine, and Elvis.
Mayday! Mayday!
Minutes later, the pilot picked up Nadine and Elvis, but at the last second, Jesse had fallen from the harness and plunged back into the sea. The flames were quickly closing in on him. Underwater, Jesse tried desperately to untangle himself from his clothes and reach the surface. The world seemed to swirl around him, disorienting him. He couldn't tell which direction was up. Just as the last bubbles of air escaped his lips, he heard a familiar sound. Someone was calling to him. It was Willy. Jesse rode Willy to safety, just like the Indian boy Natsilane. Jesse, Annie, and Glenn looked down at Willy and thanked him for his heroic effort. Jesse knew it was time for Willy to rejoin J-Pod, to be with his family. Willy lolled in the water by the side of the Natsilani, but would not leave. Randolph told Jesse that Willy wouldn't leave until Jesse gave him the familiar signal one last time.
I love you. Bye. I'm waiting.
Jesse watched quietly as Willy submerged for a final time. The Coastal Marine Patrol dropped Elvis and Nadine off on the Natsilane. Jesse greeted them both with big hugs. "Where's the fish?" Elvis asked, looking up at Jesse. "They've gone back to be with their mother," Jesse replied quietly. "How do you know?" Elvis asked. Jesse smiled and said, "I just know." Watching the two brothers talk, Annie and Glenn knew that everything was going to work out just fine. Clamshell Castle. Click the clams, match the trash, and clear the courtyard. Below each buoy is an undersea world of hidden objects. Some of it is garbage, some of it is gold, some of it should be left for the ocean to hold. Ever seen a shark shovel sand? How about a flounder fly a kite? These beach toys are better off onshore. Home is where the shells are. They are beautiful to look at, but no one treasures these hard, hollow objects more than the little animals that live in them. Ahoy, matey! It looks like some old pirate buried his booty, but ended up losing his loot. You won't need a tricky map to find this treasure. Yuck! Some things should definitely not be in the ocean. Clean water means safe water for fish, birds, whales, and humans. Lunch on the beach is fun, but leftover plastic bags can harm animals on the sand and in the water. Few people realize that bleach bottles, even dry empty ones, are toxic. They should be taken to special recycling centers. Motor oil is very toxic, whether it is fresh or used. Always take oil containers to special recycling centers. Rubber balloons should always be thrown into the trash. If left in the street, they can be swept to the ocean where they become a choking hazard to wildlife. Fishing line, if abandoned in the water, can create a tangled mess for unwitting sea creatures, including birds, seals, and sea lions. These are very common at the beach, where many animals can become tangled in them. Always break six-pack rings before you throw them in the trash. Willy is looking for Rubbing Rocks Beach so he can tickle his tummy. Guide him there with fish he finds yummy. Well, moms and pods. Beauty, brains, brawn. What a perfect way to describe a killer whale. Because of these qualities, orcas have become one of the most beloved and respected animals on Earth. Killer whales are mammals, not fish. Like other whales and porpoises, they breathe air through a small blowhole in the top of their head. Orcas can stay underwater for as long as 20 minutes. Usually, they spend no more than 5 minutes below the surface. Killer whales stay with their mother and siblings for many years. Together, they swim with related families called pods. There are two types of pods, resident and transient. Resident pods are large. Some consist of 20 or more whales. They tend to hunt and play in one area, rarely intruding on the territory of neighboring pods. Transient pods are smaller and are known to travel long distances. Some transient whales even travel alone or briefly visit other pods. Even more unusual are superpods. Scientists have observed special orca hangouts that briefly attract many pods or hundreds of whales at once. Well, move the mouse to the play. Willy introduces Little Spot to Jessie. Willy introduces Little Spot to Jessie. The Happy Family. Jessie and Nadine at Rubbing Rocks Beach.